Good morning and welcome to another Sunday live stream. In this case, a Sunday morning live stream, except for those of you in Europe. I believe that all of you are in the afternoon area, but thank you very much for showing up. And for those of you in North or South America who have decided to show up extremely early, thank you very, very much for tuning in. We got folks coming on right now, bit by bit. So I'm going to give folks a little bit of a chance. Can you hear me, first of all? I guess that's always my first question. Hello, Cyclonics. Okay. Wonderful. Hi, Warhawk. Dear Lord. Yes, indeed. Very, very early for a lot of you folks. So, in any event, thank you very much for tuning in. And I can see more and more folks are beginning to sign in. So, and hello to everyone. Yes, very glad that we had as many people sign on as possible, especially our friends from down under. And I say that because Cyclonics from down under was single-handedly responsible for making my interview with Dr. Levin something that was listenable, and it's doing well as far as these sorts of things are concerned, especially since I already released it once. People are definitely listening, and definitely some positive responses. So in any event, hi Space Diplomat, hi Framrick, hello Tom. Boy, lots of folks signing in. So in any event, yes, thanks to the support of folks that I have in my Patreon/Discord community. I get a lot of things done for this channel accomplished that I couldn't do otherwise. So thank you very much for all of you. You guys make a huge difference. Obviously, monetarily, this channel wouldn't be here without you. But on top of that, there's a lot of other things that you folks contribute that make all the difference. Okay, so that having been said, good morning again. So we have a topic this morning that we're going to be discussing. Actually, we may end up having a couple of topics because we had a tie in the votes. Not a ton of people voted on the topic. I think a lot of folks may just like watching regardless of what the topic is. I'm not certain. But in any event, when we came to the end of the day, we had a tie between propulsion methods, alternate propulsion methods, and what can companies like Rocket Lab, small little startup companies, can they make any contribution to space? And I'm going to start out with that particular topic because I had a supporter that wanted a video about this particular topic. So in any event, I'm going to go ahead and start off with this because for the longest time, I haven't made a video about this particular topic, mainly because I've always kind of felt, and I'm sorry, I'm zapping my speakers. I mute everything, and then I always end up having something that isn't muted. Everything, all of our nice little electronic devices make noises these days. So in any event, I have always kind of hesitated to make a video about this particular topic because thus far, these companies, even though they have accomplished amazing things, for the most part, they're in the business of launching satellites, launching micro satellites, little experiments that go into low Earth orbit, that sort of thing, because they're the only one that's all they're really capable of. And they can, they're working on reusability. They've come up with some very inventive ways of making reusability happen. But the question is, can little startups like this really make a contribution to our interplanetary and exploration efforts, or even the moon. For example, we had NASA has just put out a request to pay quite a lot of money for samples of moon dirt. And the reasons for that, I think, are pretty obvious. I think that the samples that they currently have are not sufficient. In other words, that it's indicating the samples that they got back from Apollo were from a relatively restricted area of the moon. And so there was a lot of elements that were lacking. And because those elements are lacking, it makes in situ fuel production, among other things, a little bit more difficult. Even though we have a lot of water on the moon, for example, we have virtually no carbon. And that doesn't make a great deal of sense because there must have been a lot of C-class asteroids that have crashed into the moon over the years. All those craters on the moon, seem to be an indication of that. So there has to be something beyond, there has to be other deposits of other kinds of materials that we haven't really accounted for yet. And so NASA is looking to get some of those samples back. Now, that having been the case, could little startups, like Rocket Lab and others, could they actually participate in something like this? Could they get a small probe to the moon? Do they have rockets with a capability? Because frankly, I don't know. I don't know actually if they can get too far beyond low Earth orbit. Could they get a very lightweight probe and carry out a sample return from the South Pole or something along those lines if there was enough money involved in it for them? Because I think the amount that's been quoted is up to $15,000 per gram or something along those lines. I mean, is this something restricted only to the big guys, or do we think that that the little guys can help out with all that? Um, okay, so we have a question. Do you think that it's a good idea for NASA government cash to go to the swift and smart startups for exploration and science rather than big industry and old school? Well, and by the way, you may have noticed I'm drinking from this Boeing cup. Smells like Boeing, by the way. And this thing gets blown into small little bite-sized chunks once we get to 40,000 subscribers. But in any event, to answer that question, yeah, I definitely think so, because the big companies, I mean, what do they really need? I mean, I've said this a lot of times about Blue Origin. They've gotten into the business of looking for subsidies, looking for handouts. They don't need any damn handouts. I mean, seriously. I mean, SpaceX, yes, gets a lot of handouts, but you know what? They had to actually launch a rocket that was that was feasible to actually prove that they were capable of putting something into orbit, at least, before NASA started seriously looking at them. And Blue Origin is getting money before they've launched a single thing, except for something into suborbital flight. That's about all they've managed to do. The New Glenn shows every promise of flying, but so far it hasn't. We haven't had a single prototype fly into low Earth orbit with the New Glenn, and yet they're getting hooked up with hundreds of millions of dollars in government funding. Fortunately, they haven't won a lot of bids since that one. I'm pleased about that, just simply because they don't need it. They are potentially the best funded private space company on the planet in terms of the amount of revenues that they have at their disposal. It's insane how much money that they have, not just in terms, yeah, Jeff, who, not just in terms of Jeff's personal wealth, but the massive profits that Amazon pulls in. Just a small percentage of that could be devoted to Blue Origin, and they would have insane amounts of money to do whatever the hell they want. Why do they need government funding? It's ridiculous. Yeah, Beth, Blue Origin is good at launching lobbying campaigns. Yeah, they are. And you know what? They're starting to play the same game that the other big boys are playing, that Grumman is playing, that Northrop plays, that Boeing plays, let's lobby Congress, let's lobby NASA, let's get that government money so we don't have to spend our own cash. Let's get those government contracts. And that's just such a significantly flawed idea, because when the government contracts go away, so too do the job opportunities when people base their job model on that, or rather their business model on that idea. It's really, really flawed. And I'll give you an example. One of my oldest friends got a full scholarship to MIT in the 1980s to study rocket science, and he studied propulsion. And then in the early 1990s, or with the fall of the Soviet Union, the military budget went away. And at that time, NASA was an instrument of the military. The space shuttle was being used to launch military satellites and military applications. So there went tons of funding for the space program, and the job opportunities for him at the moment that he graduated evaporated. And so that's why the whole idea of relying on government subsidies is such a flawed thing, is it's just so fickle. Okay, so let's get caught up here. Interesting if Rocket Lab and the photon kick stage will help get probes and science from startups out and into the solar system. Yeah, money for nothing, says Warhawk. I do agree. Yes, I'm interested in that too, to be honest. Is Rocket Lab looking at just, trying to, I mean, because there's easy money to be made for companies like Rocket Lab in terms of launching satellites, both large and small, into low Earth orbit. They're getting to the point to where they can do it cheaper than just about anybody. And so that may be their niche. That may be what they go after. But at the same time, is that what they're going to do? And yes, I agree. Another space nut. Nice to see you here. Blue Origin does have a lot of money invested in buildings at the Kennedy Space Center, because I've been to those buildings, as I mentioned in my last live stream, where they ran me off with a security guard. But in any event, like I said, maybe they saw my videos. I don't know. Okay. NASA confusing being able to lob things with lobbying. Very funny. Very funny. Going ballistic. So, Framrick, spread the science, spread the development, encourage lots of fresh ideas. We all win. I could not agree with you more. And that's another question I need to ask. Since a lot of these startups are getting started up in other countries, should these other countries do more to help them out? I don't know where Australia ranks in terms of, or New Zealand and others ranks in terms of spending capabilities. I do know that Britain has the fifth largest economy on the planet, or at least they did the last time I checked. Britain has a hell of a lot of money, every bit as much potentially to invest in the space program as the Russians do. So, there should be some interest, I would think, in their governments as well, to try to get their startups going. So in any event, can anyone start a rocket company, says Space Diplomat, with domestic and international laws on rocket technology? There are, of course, regulations that anybody needs to go through, through both, the FAA and others. But nevertheless, and also I think you need to pass certain security restrictions, because if you're capable of building a rocket that can even go into suborbital flight, you're also capable of building an intermediate range ballistic missile that you could sell to terrorist organizations. So I don't think just anybody can do this sort of thing. But nevertheless, I think a lot of people can. A lot of folks have that ability. Cyclonics has just pointed out that Australia, we love you. Amen. Sorry, I had to say that, has a rocket startup, Gilmour Space Technologies, which is currently building and testing small rockets aiming for flight in 2022. Wow. Interesting. Okay. Gilmour Space Technologies. I wonder what they're interested in going after. Framrick says New Zealand has their space agency, has set up their space agency brilliantly and has Rocket Lab. Australia coming along nicely. The United Kingdom has a lot of work to do. And that is unfortunate. Like I say, the British have an insane amount of money. Why can this money not be invested in their own space program? Why is it that they need to take rides on American vehicles? I don't see the necessity. There are plenty of talented people in the United Kingdom that could contribute to this. Australia building new laws with Rocket Lab, says another space nut. Warhawk just points out Australian research and space exploration, or ARSE. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay. Going ballistic. The British Rocket Society claims that they have developed all the ideas of how to get to the moon. They just didn't have the money to do it. Well, that may actually have been the case back in the 1950s and the 1960s. Britain was in very serious and dire economic straits in those days. It's in the midst of recovering from the Second World War. Britain was still rationing their supplies in the 1950s. One of my oldest friends lives in London, and he is old enough to remember rationing back in the 1950s. So yeah, at one point, Britain's economy was definitely struggling, and they were in no position whatsoever to do much of anything when it came to the space program. But things have changed radically, and it's ironic that we see a startup company happening in Scotland instead of the UK proper. Not to say that Scotland isn't the UK proper, but nevertheless, the Scots being the ones to go after that. Of course, the Scots have always been about engineering. So in any event, having Scottish heritage myself, so space technology has just started printing their first lunar rover, says FHM Consulting. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a contribution right there. Great idea. So smaller companies might make a lot of money, says Rick, and play an important role in clearing low Earth orbit of space debris. Yes, I totally agree with that. In fact, it is one of the primary purposes of a startup company, and I don't know why. Like I say, my brain gets fried sometimes, and sometimes I just forget company names. But they're a mining company, and they are coming at the little honeybees, queen bees. Those of you who have seen my videos, they are working on. No, it's not Skyrora. Oh, Skyrora in Scotland. Yes, yes. So in any event, now I was thinking the folks who make the honeybees and others for asteroid mining to clean out low Earth orbit as well. I actually did a remake of one of my videos that included information on that, although it wasn't a very watched video compared to some of my others. But nevertheless, I do have something about space junk and the role that that company may play in making that happen. So lots of companies are realizing small sat launchers are a good way to encourage science and tech sector development. Yes, I think that there is, there's definitely a reason for these startup companies to happen. The question is what role are they going to play in terms of ambitious exploration beyond low Earth orbit? That's where a lot of thank you very much. A link for space industries and some information about about the sorry, excuse me, about their lunar rovers. So that's definitely one organization that's looking to do something about that. I'd be curious to know whether or not they have the capability of doing sample return, because that obviously is what NASA is interested in now and is throwing out money to do. And yes, I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing that right, Skyrora. But in any event, yes, as a matter of fact, when I go to Scotland in April, it is my intention, if possible, to get an interview with one of their representatives and learning a bit about their plans. I think it's very exciting. So in any event, let's see. Going ballistic, Astra just launched from Alaska. What's up with high altitude launching? Seems like small launch over actually makes more sense than launching from Scotland in terms. Well, I don't know about Dover. It's close to France in terms of accidentally dropping your rocket down someplace else, but maybe Land's End on the other side, on the other coast. I'm not sure, excuse me, somewhere in that vicinity might make some sense in terms of launching. Why launch all the way up north there? Copenhagen Suborbitals, very interesting. I didn't know about them at all. Very interesting to watch. Stainless steel pressure tank is something that they're developing, which of course, stainless steel pressure tank. That sounds like something that SpaceX would be interested in. Not to say that they don't already have something that seems to be working, but who knows? They haven't done any tank pressure tests for the super heavy yet. We'll see whether or not their design for that is going to be just as resilient as what they've been doing for the Starship. How would somebody go about from scratch, no science or engineering background, learning how to build rockets and exploratory spacecraft? Well, I would say that Elon Musk did have a substantial leg up simply because he's a physicist. I think if you're a physicist, you've got the math at the very least. You're not necessarily a rocket scientist, but in many ways, you may as well be. There's a lot of what comes with engineering also comes with physics. By the way, my daughter just packed up and went to Clemson yesterday to study nuclear engineering, and I saw her off, and very, very tough moment for me after all these years. I couldn't be more proud of her with a full scholarship to their engineering college. But in any event, I'm very excited and have high hopes about what's going to be happening with her here in the future. Okay. Let's see here. So yeah, hard knocks. Well, thank you. Another space nut just said he's going to book me an interview with and yeah, pronouncing their name properly would probably be a good start. So I'm going to stop saying it until I'm sure that I'm saying it right. So let's see. Audoi is kind of interesting. I'm sorry, I don't even know. I didn't even know how to pronounce that one. Okay. Oh, sorry, we lost. Audio is cutting. Okay, so that's what you meant. The stream was getting cut out. The stream's okay now. Everything's all right. Okay, I hope it is. We'll keep things going here. So, space industries will be helium-3 mining. Okay, great. So, yes, return from the moon is essential. Talking to NASA with a lot of Artemis linkage. So, yes, it seems that space industries is very ambitious when it comes to what they're doing on the moon. Sounds like that sample return, well, that could be one of the first things that they do is sample return, to start getting better connections with NASA, and also some NASA money off of that deal. Um, Yes, there seems to be somebody who has joined, but this is, yes, indeed, where you send questions, discussions, that sort of thing. So yes. Oh, Framrick, I did not know that you were a nuclear engineer. Thank you very much. Yes, I could not be more proud. I'm really, really thrilled that she's doing this, and she'll be able to tell me quite a lot about alternate forms of propulsion and that sort of thing as time goes on, I think. Although her plan is nuclear power for the future, I think fusion is one of the things that she's the most interested with. Sample return missions worth it. Any issues with planetary protection, says Framrick. The one thing is that we've already done a lot of sample returns from the moon. We've returned hundreds of kilograms of material from the moon already with nothing having happened. And I would say that that was kind of more dumb luck than anything else. But it seems that sample returns from the moon is a relatively safe thing to do. Although, who knows, we stumble across the wrong area of the moon that has an extremophile surviving that's evolved into something nastier. There could be some issues there. So it's kind of hard to say. I would definitely say sample returns from the moon, though, are way, 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 way safer than sample returns from Mars, where at this point I am 100% convinced. 100% convinced that we have life. And yes, I'm biased, but after talking to Dr. Levin, I don't know. We use these tests to determine whether or not there's bacteria in drinking water, and we gamble people's lives on this test, and it's never produced a false positive in practical use. And it came up with positive results at 2 locations on Mars. So I'm not going to get into that. You can just watch the interview. And in any event, I do think that returns from the moon are probably going to be a hell of a lot safer. And also, Dr. Levin he advocates actually that any samples we bring back from other planets, we send it to the moon first. The lunar gateway I brought up, and he said that that would be a perfect place for it during the interview. But in any event, anywhere on the moon, just a lab on the moon would be a good place to go first. Moon Dust by Stephen Baxter. No, I haven't read Moon Dust by Stephen Baxter. Okay, bear with me. It's going to get dry here. Worth getting an orbital lab at some point for receiving samples, mainly to do the initial analysis. Well, yeah, Framrick, I think I've kind of answered that question. That's one of the biggest purposes that NASA has stated for the Lunar Gateway is for any sample returns to go through them. However, I don't know about sample returns from the moon. The lunar gateway may not be in place by the time we're sending sample returns back. I would say that we're probably safe on the moon, but once again, probably safe is not necessarily 100% safe. So who knows? I mean, just because all the places we went to on the moon doesn't mean that some asteroid a long time ago didn't crash into another part of the moon and survive, especially in the lunar South Pole, where we have water, that sort of thing. But still, it sounds like sample returns are something that small rocket companies could pull off, or small startups in general. Which planet do you think we might get probes to first that would detect life? Mars, which would indicate Dr. Levin, Venus, upper atmosphere, or Europa and Enceladus? Um, I would say, Frammer, that would depend on whether or not the Chinese actually have a life detection system. Yeah, Yeah, going ballistic. I agree with what you're saying. Of course, I tend to be a little biased towards Dr. Levin, but nevertheless, he suspects that the Chinese do have something, an experiment pack on their lander, and they're going to announce the discovery of life on Mars next year. So in any event, my money is on that right now, is that the Chinese think that there is life on Mars, and they are going to make that claim. They're not going to be afraid to do it because they're going to be very excited to be the first country to make the announcement and all of the prestige that goes with that. And it's kind of hard for NASA to go back and say, well, yeah, we kind of always knew that since 1976. We just never told you. That reminds me of Tremors, actually. But anyway, okay, so let's keep it going. Let's keep the discussion going here. Ricker is typing and definitely needs some more. So right now, so far, we've determined that there are small startups that are creating lunar rovers, at least one that's coming up with not only lunar rovers, but also mining helium-3, that sort of thing. It sounds like that we are getting very aggressive about the possibility of, or some small companies are aggressive about the possibility, at least when we're talking about lunar sample return. What about other applications, other things that small startups, folks who are a lot smaller than SpaceX, might be able to contribute to our efforts to explore the solar system? What else do we have? What other startups? Small companies possibly reaching near Earth objects. Yes, I like that suggestion. That's already been suggested already. And once again, I don't know why I keep forgetting the name of this company. The folks who create the queen bee, the honey bee designed for asteroid mining. But in any event, that's one of their proposals right now, is not only going to near Earth objects, but for smaller ones to capture them and bring them back to low Earth orbit and mine them. Um, Excuse me. So in any event, I think that there's near Earth objects. There's a lot that could be gained from that. A lot that could be learned in terms of their composition. How easy would it be to mine them? What could we gain? I mean, only have a single sample return coming back from an asteroid very soon. As a matter of fact, the Japanese mission will be returning asteroid. There you go. Thank you. Yes, Trans Astra. Thank you so much, Framrick. I don't know why in the world I've reported on them so many stinking times, and yet I keep forgetting their name. Thank you so much, Framrick. Yes, Trans Astra is a startup that has some really brilliant ideas, I think, in terms of mining space ice and other materials as far as that's concerned, capturing very sizable asteroids. That's really, thank you very much. Hayabusa, thank you. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, will be returning December 6th, 2020. So for those of you, and this is an asteroid sample return. For those of you who are fans of the Andromeda strain, look out, because that moment is coming really, really soon. And let's hope whatever samples are being returned from this asteroid are as dead as hell, or are just completely harmless. But who knows? That could be our first discovery of extraterrestrial life. Wouldn't that be the strangest thing in the world? If the Hayabusa sample return were to bring back microbial life, and our first discovery of extraterrestrial life actually happens on the 6th of December 2020, or somewhere thereabouts. India needs to get private sector involvement, says FHM Consulting. I would agree, even though India does suffer from a substantial amount of poverty in many areas of their country. They definitely do have the know-how when it comes to rockets and getting things into orbit. Obviously, they've already been able to do it. All governments, says Framrich, says should encourage private sector involvement. The returns can be well worth it to science and tech sectors. Cyclonic says, fingers crossed that Hayabusa 2 doesn't fall apart on re-entry. Yes, my fingers are crossed about that too. Or if it does fall apart on re-entry, let's hope it incinerates anything that's on board. Once again, I would say that the odds of that it would return anything that would be dangerous are highly, highly unlikely. But once again, Dr. Levin did suggest that this whole region of space is one biosphere, that Mars and Earth have been exchanging biological material for a very long time and have influenced the development of each other's evolution. And so therefore there may be more connections between the development of life on both planets. And so therefore there could be some more compatibility with Martian bacteria, or indeed any bacteria. But yes, transpermia could be detection via asteroids. Yes, Framrick. For all we know, we could find that sort of thing in this sample. Did we not collect samples from a comet tail with aerogel or something to catch the dust? Did that not break open on landing? I don't know, Warhawk. I don't really recall if that broke open or not. And once again, comets, it depends on where the comets come from. If they're coming all the way from the Oort cloud, that's very different than something that comes from in the neighborhood. But still, yeah, I'm not sure what happened as far as that's concerned. Rickers, can unmanned spacecraft still be remotely reprogrammed from afar to not crash or destroy the Perseverance sky crane after delivering payload? Yes, as far as I know, Ricker, given the fact that we did exactly that with Pluto and the New Horizons, we reprogrammed that on the fly in the space of a few days to get it working in time to deliver these stunning photos and evidence that was sent back by the New Horizons. One of my favorite missions that NASA has ever carried out, by the way. Pluto is an amazing place that we need to return to. But in any event, as far as I know, yes, remote reprogramming is something that can be done. Excuse me. It seems that, and I'm hoping every time I sip from this, I get more subscribers. So you guys will want me to destroy this. So it seems that artificial intelligence will need to play a role in these missions, says Space Diplomat, for the detailed and complex sample returns. Yes, I would say that the smarter the computer, the better. As far as narrow artificial intelligence is concerned, I do share Elon Musk's concerns about hyper-intelligent AI and the dangers that represents and how easily something like that could be militarized. But narrow artificial intelligence to help with bringing back sample returns. Yeah, I agree with that. The key question, here's an answer from Starship Tricks. The key question is whether or not you want to design or build. To design, a basic engineering education, metals, energy, momentum, electricity, etc., is just essential. But to build, it's about machining, composites, just being a detail-oriented, conscientious team player. For that, it's about as getting hands-on as humanly possible. our buddy BPS Space on YouTube is rolling out his own education online and doing a fantastic job of doing it. Well, there we go. Just got an endorsement for BPS Space, who I'll definitely need to check out. So yeah, of course, once again, I must emphasize that the one restriction that I can definitely see in terms of building your own rocket company is security related issues. If you can build a suborbital rocket that can carry a warhead, even if it's non-nuclear, you can make intermediate range ballistic missiles and become a serious terrorist threat. So in any event, I would say that would be one of the few restrictions that would be in place in terms of whether or not you can go and start launching your own rockets into suborbital or orbital space. That was the original Hayabusa sample return. This one has better parachutes, says FHM Consulting. So yes, the original Hayabusa sample return broke open. FHM Consulting, was it incinerated in the atmosphere when it broke open? Was everything burned up and everything lost like space dust, or did something survive out of that? I'm curious about that. But in any event, okay, Starship tricks. Frankly, there's more than enough jokers with aerospace engineering degrees who are useless, but people good at machinery, electricity, composite layup, welding, especially aluminum and titanium. Holy shit. And I'm more than happy to say that those guys are supermen and get asked for their resumes their entire lives. Well, yes, I think we got to see that recently with the failures on the SN work and the welding issues and that sort of thing. A few prototypes blowing apart just during the pressure tests, and learning that the welding jobs suffered and were not sufficient in order to contain the propellant. And imploding, that sort of thing. Getting better consulting work on that definitely made a big difference. Okay, what are the odds that there's higher life organisms or simply microbes on other planets as seeker of knowledge? I would say the higher life organisms on other planets beyond the solar system, I say 100%. I'm biased, but I say 100%. In the solar system, I would say very, very low, unless there's something that's intelligent that's developed in the oceans of Europa or something along those lines that can't, escape their ocean prison because of ice and that sort of thing. But who knows? There might be something there. We really don't know about Europa, and until we send a submarine down there, and not just Europa, Enceladus, that sort of thing, we aren't going to know. Okay, I'm starting to fall back. Alien Zookeeper. The topic is small rocket companies. Currently, it was a tie, and since I had a request to do something about rocket labs, and I said that I would. Do something about it. I decided to break the tie, and that's what we're talking about, unless we run out of time. If there were more complex organisms in the solar system, they would be us, says Cyclonics. Yes, I think that that's probably the case. So, okay, we're still going here. The Copenhagen Suborbital guys are rolling out their own rocket building experience too. If you can just get there, offer to work for free, sleep on someone's couch, then boom, you're really blasting off, says Starship Tricks. Well, thank you. Really good to know that. Going ballistic. Frankly, there's more than enough. Okay, did you just call me the Joker? Says going ballistic. We just called somebody very intelligent the Joker. That never bodes well. Okay, Framrick, should a pioneering Starship company that successfully retrieves valuable asteroid materials get to keep them? Yes, as long as they're not dangerous. I would, once again, the laws in space are are very, very difficult to pin down, and we haven't worked a lot about this sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, if you invest the money in it,
unless you're handing them over to NASA. Okay, FHM Consulting did say no, they got some samples, but it was just that it hit the ground too hard and cracked the shell. So they did get something out of it, and there was no massive pandemic. So that being the case, we're probably we may be in luck. We may be okay, and no Andromeda strain coming soon. Kepler B22 likely has life underwater as well. Yes, we have found so many planets, and once again, given the fact that the more we discover about the solar system, the more it seems that life can take root pretty easily. And who knows what sort of life might develop. The prospect of methanogenic life on Titan, for example, seems like a very compelling possibility. Could methanogenic life develop into something intelligent? If that's the case, it totally blows the whole concept open, wide open. So in any event, yes, Kepler 22b, a link was just thrown up there by another space nut. Thank you very much. Yes, Kepler 22b having very likely an ocean and that sort of thing. So yes, it's a very, very good target. Once again, though, are Earth-like planets, the only target we should be looking at? Are we restricting ourselves in terms of what defines intelligent life? And, could intelligent life be based on silicon? Could intelligent life be something entirely different? And we're restricting ourselves by just looking in the Goldilocks zone. Should we be looking for techno signatures in places outside of Goldilocks zones? I say yes, especially if we come across methanogenic life on Titan. Who's to say that later on, methanogenic life or something similar could not develop to be intelligent? Uh, okay, so all right, we'll build rockets for food. I'll tell you, that's a job I would have a hard time with. That would be beyond difficult. In spite of my interest in space, my patience for hard mathematics is difficult. I actually have to do a lot of research on the internet to get a lot of my mathematical information for my videos. Did I view the antimatter propulsion video by Propulsion Dynamics? I have not yet, and I'm going to, because I'm going to do an antimatter propulsion video here soon. So yes, I will be watching that very soon once I'm doing my antimatter video. Once again, the production of antimatter continues to be an issue, but once again, from what you told me, Seeker of Knowledge, that's something that we may be able to get around. Of course, if we get around it, then we're starting to look at antimatter bombs, which is dangerous as hell. Okay, so Framrick, worth sending aerial probes to Venus. You know what? That's the topic of my video, hopefully coming out today. So in any event, um, excuse me, Framrick. Actually, I just released a video about NASA's future plans, and their roadmap suggests that going to Venus is actually the going to Venus is actually step one. That the that go an interplanetary journey to Venus seems to be their first plan when it comes to interplanetary travel, rather than going to Mars first, because Venus is a lot easier when it comes to time invested, when it comes to abort opportunities. They'll get some valuable interplanetary experience with less risk. Okay, Space Diplomat, I can see startup building repeaters or satellites for communication for the interstellar and Proxima Centauri journey. Yeah, well, that's interesting. Space diplomat. That's a startup building that. Of course, in low Earth orbit, we have so much static, so much noise. It would be great if a startup could send something that could transmit on the other side of the moon where they're not so interfered with. Yeah, Framrick just said we need an episode to debate the Fermi paradox. Actually, we did do an episode on that, a discussion on it, but perhaps I should bring it back up. But we did do something on alien life. It is in the background. I don't believe actually that there is a Fermi paradox. I think that we've seen more than enough evidence in terms of techno signatures and signals, and it's just our narrow-mindedness that's preventing us. And once again, I'm not talking about UFOs. I think that we've seen more than enough to rule it all out. I don't think there is a Fermi paradox. I think that there are other technically advanced civilizations out there. They're just not communicating with us on a regular basis. Um, what's the reason to? Unless they're just as intelligent, I mean, we're not sending out signals on a regular basis. Why should they? It's not easy. Okay, Tom, how do we find out what's the habitat zone, habitable zone? We've only been to one planet to find out. Exactly my point, Tom. We don't know what the habitable zone is. We really don't understand that. I think that we should be looking for techno signatures everywhere. Because moons of gas giants, who knows? We need to be looking around, not just in the habitable zone when it comes to techno signatures. Okay, defined by water in three states of water exists in three states. The chance of life, then there's a percentage incredibly low being put in there. Okay, Moon to Venus to Mars, says Cyclonics. Yes, that's actually the layout. I have a video specifically about that. It's entitled something along the lines of SLS is that NASA is going to dump SLS, and then I talk about NASA's future plans. They have a roadmap for their exploration of the solar system, and they are currently taking proposals for their Havoc, the high altitude Venus operational concept, which I am going to be releasing a video hopefully today that's going to be discussing that in detail. So I do believe that NASA, that their intention is to go to Venus first before they go to Mars, simply because Venus is easier to get to. Smaller companies recycling space trash should not waste energy reprocessing on the ground, but do in orbit electron beams or furnace melting for orbital station structure materials. Very interesting. Recycling space trash, using small startups to do that. Why not? There's a lot of material up there, isn't it? And we're not using any of it. As a matter of fact, we've got all these expended boosters up there that we're not using. I think that's is a Kickstarter with Rocket Lab feasible for Venus? Boy, that's a long ways out. I'm not sure if Rocket Lab has anything that's capable of getting that far without and being capable of escaping Earth's gravity well to that degree. I'm not certain what they're capable of. And Framrick replies, not for crew, but for probes and transit routes for cargo, moon, Venus, Mars link up. So there's our answer. Yes, they could possibly do it. Wow. So yeah, Rocket Lab could achieve some amazing things. Read some life where octopi could be considered a basis for a different type of intelligent life. Yes, that is actually true. That's been discussed extensively. As a matter of fact, also discussed by Gaudier, what the heck is his first name? In any event, in his channel, he's discussed about how octopi are extremely intelligent, and therefore something like them developing in Europa's oceans could end up being quite intelligent. Um, I'll bid on a mua mua, says Framrick. I think that's what you're talking about there, says Framrick, when we're talking about intelligent life. Yes, I've been constantly talking about how all these natural explanations for a mua mua keep getting shot down. How we keep that as more data comes in, that a mua mua continues to appear more like a very flat, very thin substance that somehow was accelerated by solar energy. I can't think of anything more similar to a solar sail than that. And now I'm going into alternate forms of transportation, but in any event. In any event, the market for a Kickstarter, goal, purpose of such a mission. Okay, so Kickstarter with Rocket Lab. Yeah, well, once again, Kickstarters, that's another thing. Kickstarters for interplanetary or for any space related efforts have generally not produced very good results. They usually haven't raised a whole lot of money. So they're going to need some other kind of support besides Kickstarters. They're going to need support from scientific agencies, from governmental agencies, that sort of thing. Maybe from Russia. I mean, the Russians are very interested in Venus anyway. Rocket Lab provides the photon kick stage, get some Zeppelin probes together for the upper atmosphere. Kickstarter or grabbing NASA cash. And yeah, I'd say grabbing NASA cash is a big part and is actually, once again, part of their Havoc program. If they got a small startup to take care of stage one of their Havoc program, which is an unmanned mission that includes putting a balloon into the Venusian atmosphere, they can get somebody else to do that for them, then that takes care of step one of the Havoc program. Heat can be produced in other ways than starlight, tidal forces, radioactivity. Okay. Let's see here. Just drifting balloons, basic instruments, some selfie cameras that update new 60 seconds every week to a YouTube channel should do it. Yes. Once again, yeah, I would say that that sending something to Venus. Oh, okay, and yes, there is a company planning to refurb second stage to make mini space stations. Yes, indeed, there is a company planning to do that. And once again, I am forgetting about who they are, and I just even reported on them. Doggone it. Okay. Okay, so in any event, please, by the way, hit like, subscribe, and if you want to continue seeing these sorts of episodes, and continue with these sorts of discussions or participate in them, you know what to do. It's in the description on how to be a Patreon supporter. Um, I'm continuing to try to expand the scope of this channel. And in order to do that, right now I'm keeping my head above water, but and thank you very much. I couldn't do it without you. But at the same time, certainly any support whatsoever, and you can be a part of this discussion for $3 a month. Pretty doggone cheap way to do things. So in any event, if you want to be part of this, ask questions, or just put your opinions out there for me to talk about. I'm more than happy to do that. And once again, $3 a month. I'll certainly take more, but yeah, $3 a month is where it gets started. And by the way, I'm starting to release more benefits besides just that. For example, um, the redone interview that was done with better audio, that was released to my Discord folks 24 hours before it was released to the general public. And I'm going to be doing more and more of that, not only early release, but also exclusive content, that sort of thing. So investing some money in Patreon will get you some more out of this channel. Okay, so that's enough self promotion there. Rocket Lab have the new photon kick stage. We'll get to Venus, says Framrick. Boy, Rocket Lab is looking more and more attractive all the time. And nanoracks, yes, thank you very much. Book SpaceX rocket to launch a space habitat demo in 2020. Wow. So yeah, how about that? So NanoRacks is very interested once again in repurposing stations, and they got SpaceX to do that stuff for them. So that is some interesting stuff. Oh, there's an absolutely terrible movie about octopi or octopodes or whatever on Europa eating astronauts. Yes, I have seen that movie. That was a weird one. Hold on. Especially when the last surviving astronaut intentionally let the octopus in. Oh boy, spoiler. Oh dear, I need to stop that. Okay. FHM Consulting. I would contribute money to any Kickstarter that was serious just to embarrass the gazillionaires. Yes. If we got a Kickstarter that would actually produce some results, FHM Consulting, that would be an awesome thing, no doubt. Space Diplomat says, what can an individual do to contribute to space exploration? If I can't start a company or be hired because of no degree or experience in STEM, well, once again, Space Diplomat, I mean, you know what? All you need to do is learn how to be a welder, for one thing. A good welder is hard to come by. And they're assembling one version of SN after another in Boca Chica, and they're going to continue to need welders as time goes on, because I think they're going to be doing work there for a long time. Okay, will Vasimir ever fly, or is it just a mirage? We just moved into alternate Sneed. Hello, Sneed. I don't think you've participated before, so welcome, if that is indeed the case. I think Vasimir will fly if we get fusion. It's very energy. It's a very energy intensive form of propulsion. But yes, I think it can. But I think it's going to take practical fusion in order to be able to do that. Okay, let's see. So I'm starting to fall behind here. Nuclear thermal seems to be the next best thing to chemical. So yeah, ion just doesn't cut it most of the time. Yeah, nuclear thermal. Well, there is going to be a test of nuclear thermal in 2024. NASA is aggressively moving towards that. And since that they're going to be testing nuclear thermal in 2024, it seems to me that they're going to be using nuclear thermal for interplanetary exploration. I think that's their ambition, is to start looking towards that form of propulsion for interplanetary journeys. Ion drives for probes, yes, Framrick, I agree, not good for crewed flight, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, if startups are going to be using probes, why not include ion drives for that? Antimatter, seeker of knowledge, getting back to antimatter, will get you to Mars in weeks, according to propulsion dynamics. Yes, that's very true. Antimatter can accomplish some amazing stuff, and also can, it depends on how much of it we create, but bit by bit, antimatter can get us a long ways. So yeah, but yeah, it all depends on whether or not we come up with some sort of breakthrough on how to create antimatter. That is one of the biggest problems with it, is that it's so insanely expensive to create this stuff. It would take more than the combined gross national product of the entire planet for years and years to create 1 gram of antimatter with current technology. But once again, we don't know that for certain. So once again, when I create something about antimatter, and I promise I'm doing that soon, that's coming up soon. I'm going to be looking very, very much into antimatter and alternate forms of producing it. Okay, so I would love to see helium-3. All right, so we're just an hour into it. Good. Okay, so I'd like to see helium-3 fusion or proton boron fusion in my lifetime. Huge electricity generation, drive of choice, or direct exhaust. Well, we'll see. Who knows if maybe my daughter can come up with some kind of breakthrough. If somebody can do it, she can. I'll tell you. She is quite amazing. So we shall see. Okay. Yes. So I appreciate it. We got some new folks joining. So some of them cooking dinner and listening. So welcome to all of you, everybody who's joining this conversation. And we still have a lot of folks who are online, which is great given how early it is in some parts of the world. And of course, we've got folks from the other side of the planet still producing. Okay, so please don't confuse rocket propellant with rocket fuel. They are not the same. Fuel creates the energy needed for the reaction. Propellant is the reaction mass needed to propel the vehicle forward. It is the serendipity for that chemical reaction that they are both at the same time. But in an ion drive, the gas is propellant only. Noble gases are non-reactive and hence cannot produce energy. The energy in this case comes from the sun, a nuclear pile, or the battery, but not from a propellant. That is actually true. And that is actually well, it's partially the case with nuclear fusion. Or rather, the nuclear thermal drive, in which case it's using a nuclear reaction to superheat the propellant, which is hydrogen, and driving it out the nozzle. Of course, then, so you're using a nuclear reaction from fission, which is coming from uranium, in order to superheat the propellant, which is hydrogen, and then driving it out the nozzle. And so, for conventional reactions, yes, they happen to be one and the same, but propellant is not the case when you're talking about other types of reaction like ion, nuclear, etc. There's also a new Chinese drive I stumbled across while researching quantum batteries. Interesting seeker of knowledge. I'd be interested to learn more about that. Positron dynamics and creating antimatter is energy prohibitive. I am interested in all that though, so I'd really like to learn more about that. Is there any alternative to chemical propulsion to get to from the ground to low Earth orbit? Asks Sneed. Currently, as far as I know, no, there are ways to assist the project. For example, Virgin Galactic use an aircraft in order to get the vehicle to a higher altitude, and then use chemical propulsion to get it further. And then let's see, and then ARCA are making a water-based launch assist system. And once again, all of it kind of comes to assist. ITER Fusion Project has finally started building the actual device, still at least a decade away, says Cyclonics. That's true. But at the same time, arguably, we could be at least a decade away from exploring the outer solar system anyway. And as I reported in one of my episodes, one of my issues about, episodes about fusion drives, talking about exploring the outer solar system, we're certainly at least a decade away, if not longer, before we can do that. And exploring the outer solar system with fusion power is certainly the best way to do it, or one of the best ways to do it. Yeah, time when we will have fusion. We just add 30 years to the time, says Cyclonics every single time. Yeah, that's true. We seem to be getting a little closer now. I hope that's the case. I think we're closer than 30 years personally. But once again, I'm really optimistic about that. Okay, to combine the two topics, do we need an Elon Musk for fusion or new energy in the same way that SpaceX has revolutionized the space industry? Should we be promoting the race for energy? Yes. Well, as far as that's concerned, promoting the race for energy. There are private companies already doing that to some degree. And yeah, the conventional way of doing it seems to be taking forever. And there are lots of different ways to make fusion. So we still need to be going after that. Thorium might be better and more realistic, and then thorium once again, that's a fission rather than fusion. But nevertheless, okay, yes, welding skills. So yes, what I brought up in terms of that um, is if you become a welder, then yeah, you can get into that kind of work, especially now since everybody is constructing rockets. Being a welder is definitely something that would help out. I would love to see gravity or an anti-gravity device to at least cancel out Earth's gravity. Well, yeah, anti-gravity is definitely one that we talk about a lot, but there doesn't seem to be any. I mean, artificial gravity we talk about, but anti-gravity continues to be a thing of science fiction. There's always somebody who talks about how they figured it out, but when we come down to the end of it, we haven't actually figured it out. So it always turns out to be some kind of misinformation. Yeah, just start with regular steel at the community college. Start screwing around with other metals in the garage. Yep. Thanks, Starship Tricks. He's kind of giving a step by step on how to get into the welding business. Bramrick says thorium needs an accelerator system, more research needed, but most systems are just too big and heavy. We need smart, small, and powerful. Small fusion is probably the way. Z-pinch, stellarator, etc. Yes, having multiple small fusion reactors, that kind of is the way that helium-3 would need to go anyway as a smaller reactor. So yes, anti-grav is a thing if you believe Bob Lazar, and there are a lot of people who believe Bob Lazar. So that always cracks me up. Okay. Can you imagine if we see the shift from high tech aluminum or carbon fiber rocket scientists to weld it in the Texas sun? It'll do rocket tech. Well, that seems to be kind of happening right now, isn't it? That seems to be how we're trying to accomplish it in order to save money. Until oil tanked, the U.S. oil majors were interested in getting into fusion to compete with green energy, but then Saudi and Russia killed their revenue. Yes, especially Russia is good at doing that. FHM Consulting, and he's talking about the fact that Russia, especially Vladimir Putin, seeing that the United States was starting to compete in the oil industry, dumped a ton of oil on the market in order to drive the prices down into the floorboards to kill oil companies, American oil companies. Once again, it was some nasty, nasty tactics, but I can't blame them too much, given the fact that Russia's revenue comes from oil, that they are highly dependent on it. So in any event, I can see why they did it. The Saudis, on the other hand, you know what? They've got enough money to where they could start doing something else the way the United Arab Emirates is, and they ought to. But so far, I'm not sure if they have. Becoming a master specialty of welding requires considerable study and talents. It's not just as simple as you would first surmise. No, it isn't simple. Magnesium is ultra lightweight and rigid, but flammable. It's used in strong vibration environments and fixtures, commonly having 1 inch or more of penetration welds. Yeah, a master of welding is quite a thing. A guy who can do that makes himself a decent living. It's one of the few jobs, construction jobs, actually, to where you can make a good living if you're a good welder. That's definitely something. And I've known some in my time. So in any event, or learn robotic welding. The robots are taking over because of a shortage of welders. Not that robots are necessarily better. Why would a mass driver not work as a launch system, says Seeker of Knowledge? A mass driver would work as a launch system where we have lower gravity. It would take a hell of a mass driver in order to have a launch system on Earth because of the gravity. The gravity on this planet is a real problem, but it definitely can be used on places like the moon, especially, and on other moons of the solar system, perhaps Mars. Alien Zookeeper, oxidizer, liquid oxygen is the lion's share of methalox. That's true. Liquid oxygen is the lion's share of it, 3.7 to 1 at the preferred ratio. And again, off topic, lunar sourced oxygen to low Earth orbit will be a big help. Yes, that is true. One thing that we got to hope for is that we can also produce methane on it without on the moon. Without it, it's going to be a bit of a problem. So anyway, I used to think Bob Lazar was a cook, but as the years passed, he proved to be more right. Well, hard to say. I haven't watched him in a while. Going ballistic, why air friction? Yep, that is another problem for mass drivers not working as a launch system. It works on the moon. I would say that it's a great thing to use there, not so much elsewhere. Not so much elsewhere. Framrick, well, thank you. I appreciate you showing up. Likers and subscribers unite, he says. So thank you very much for that. We still have a few minutes left. I may have to cut this slightly early. My son is actually here, unusually on a Sunday. So I may cut this slightly early, but I'm going to push for as long as possible. Okay, G-forces need to be considered. Read Arthur C. Clarke, says Framrick, and other scientific papers need a really good superconducting strip on the moon. Mass drivers are a very pragmatic solution. They are indeed. Starship Trick says, I really hit the calculator on this question and found that bringing liquid oxygen from the moon to low Earth orbit is a bad deal compared to just hauling it up from Texas instead. It comes out to delta V from the moon to low Earth orbit and back. No better than from Texas to low Earth orbit and back to Texas. It depends on I would say, once again, it depends on what kind of work we're doing and where. Starship Tricks, you know, I'm a really big, I have a huge problem with the Earth's gravity. I think the more that we can work outside of its influence and the more launching that we can do outside of its influence, the better. That little delta V diagram, where is the biggest number on that delta V diagram that we all look at? It's Earth. Earth has that huge delta V diagram amount that it requires in order to escape it. If we can find unique ways to escape Earth's gravity, well, but once again, we're going to need a presence in space in order to be able to do that. Okay, how big of a I'm starting to fall behind here. Good for raw materials. G's might be too much for fragile payloads. Yes, I would say raw materials would be a good thing. And once again, I think a lot of the delta V stuff from the moon can be bypassed by a mass driver. I really think that can make a big difference. Okay, let's see. Welding can easily be self-taught, can be honed at school. Was able to teach myself at 14, says Tom. Wow. I've had a few different welding jobs. I did not know that, Tom. Thanks for sharing. Employers prefer experience over schooling. That's a very good thing. Thank you for that. Okay, let's see. All right. Alien Zookeeper, or why would you want it on the ground? Okay. If you can get a cheap and cheerful mass driver system from the moon, you can launch canisters of stuff from the moon into low Earth orbit at relatively better cost than Earth launches decades away, though. Yes, that is probably true, but nevertheless, something that we should be working towards. I think that we definitely need to be working towards a mass driver on the moon. It makes way too much sense. Way too much sense. All it takes is a cheap welder, some material, and patience with yourself. So, in any event, Tom seemed to be okay. 9.8 kilometers per second, says Cyclonics, when it comes to that Earth Delta V. Yes, it's annoying. It's, we talk about how, and I've said this a couple of times, we talk about how perfect this planet is. It's a pain in the ass when it comes to trying to get out of Earth's gravitational influence. It's crazy how tough it is to launch things from here. If this planet was a little bit bigger, we'd be trapped here. That's how bad it is. And that's one thing that makes Mars such a good place for a colony in the future. So much easier to escape with rocket launches there than any place else. But we're getting way off topic there. Spin launch system at Spaceport America right now. How about that? Okay, well, thank you for that, says Seeker of Knowledge. Okay. All right. So we have some debating going on. I'm going to go ahead and bypass a little bit of that. Don't forget, Mass Driver is still a maglev system, which is already in operation in solar power. Lots of mass to get it there. But once it's there, boom, cheap mass to orbit. Framrick, I'm on your side. I do think that that it is necessary, or I think that mass drivers on the moon are the key to us exploiting the moon. We really need to do it. Yeah, it does take a lot of mass, but you know what? At the same time, the Starship eliminates a lot of that mass problem. I think that that there's a lot of reason for us to go and do that. We're all over the place on topic, guys. Sorry about that. According to every sci-fi film, welding appears to be a prerequisite to be a space jockey. That's true. Okay, so all right. So Space Diplomat, thank you. Oh, well, you are quite welcome. Yes, for these, they are very fun. I really do enjoy it. I do enjoy. I'm gonna put some consideration on whether or not I do these things ad free while they're live. Sometimes I add the ads to the recorded version depending on where I am financially. I really want to do it to where these things are ad free, just totally free in general. But I'm not always in that position. It depends, but I'm going to definitely try to make that happen. And a link was just placed for mass drivers on the moon. Last comment, Framrick, because I'm going to cut off at this point, which is a little early. I do apologize, guys, but at the same time, I do have my kid here. And so in any event, well, thank you, Framrick. I appreciate that, about your comment about ads and that sort of thing on the recorded version of this. So in any event, we've been all over the place. We've talked about space, and I have to admit, it has been an eye opener to me as to how much little startup companies are able to do and how many things they might be able to contribute to our exploration. We've talked about alternate propulsion, fusion, all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of been an all over the place discussion, but in any event, it's been a hell of a lot of fun. And I always do enjoy talking to you folks. And thank you so much to all of the spectators who showed up. You know how to participate in this, and I certainly hope that you're able to do so. So until we are ready to to strike out into interplanetary space and hopefully take a lot of small startups along for the ride, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.